That kind of actually segues into something that I wanted to get into today is, like the pursuit of money. That concept that I messaged you about was we were talking about, well, I asked you about, no one's talking about or no one's doing art and uh, engaging in philosophy when barbarians are at the gate. And I kind of thought of that on like a micro level as a dude, you're out in the world. You don't really have time to do the like that stupid thing millennials were told, pursue your passion, like
Right.
pursue your passion. And that was something that I fell for. I pursued a music career in my early 20s, and that all I really ended up at the end of that was a bunch of debt, and I never really went anywhere. I mean, I had some success, but eventually I got to a point where I was like, you know what, like I'm going to be in serious trouble if I don't get my financial house in order.
Right.
We talk about, you talk about masculinity being a part of masculinity is being a resource for people. And,
Yeah.
and a part of that is finances. So this is something I've been thinking about a lot lately. Cause like I run a business with my brother that it's doing really well. And I'm making good money. Owning your own business, you make good money, but it's not like something that I'm necessarily passionate about. And I'm
Sure.
pretty sure there's like a lot of guys that are in that position where they're doing something to make money that they're not necessarily fully engaged in. But
Mhm.
what do you think about that? Like what advice would you give, or like what's your take or perspective on the whole like pursue your passion thing?
Well, I'm a terrible example because that's what I do. But yeah. But
That's
I
why
mean,
I'm asking you.
the world can't run that way. I mean, like that's a big thing. Is everybody was sold on this idea that we're all supposed to do something sexy. Like everybody wants to be, with like the Fight Club thing. I don't know, rock stars, movie gods, and whatever. And not everyone can do that. Once upon a time, a guy was like, you know what? I think I can make a good living selling rain gutters, and and
Yeah.
starts a rain gutter company and makes a good living, and has a whole, has his family, has his house, has all kinds of stuff, has this whole company centered around selling rain gutters, which is the most unsexy thing that you could imagine. But I mean, that's, if you need your rain gutters fixed, he's the guy, and so that's men used to do that, and do something reasonable, and we've all kind of been told that we need to do something exciting.
Right.
And for some of us that is the thing. I mean, I did the normal thing for 20 years. I mean, I did, and like I said, I think you said you run a moving company, and I'm like, I delivered exercise equipment for like my favorite job I ever had, really, about 4 years. And then I delivered produce, and drove a truck doing that, and did all the making your ends meet things that you have to do. And then there's also I managed to make a success out of something that I really cared about. And so that came out of that, but I had to pay the bills the whole time I was doing that. I always feel lazy now because I'm like, man, I wrote The Way of Men when I was like driving a delivery truck on the weekends. Like, okay, I'd come home and I'd be writing The Way of Men like on the weekends instead of doing other things. And I guess that's how I, get to feel like I earned what I was doing. I earned what I have now, is that like I put a lot of work in on the side. I guess The Way of Men was my side hustle, right? I put a lot of work in on that, and it paid off over time. But you have to do the stuff to stay alive. You can't just like jump into the sexy thing right away necessarily. And there's other things that I think of even personally, because there's a lot of guys who will tell you how to make money, and if you just want to make money so that you can do fun things, that is a route too, and it's not invalid. There's a lot of things that I think about, even like, even with, I'm spoiled that I don't have to, but with my own businesses and so forth, I really only put out stuff that I want. Like with my, with t-shirts and all that kind of stuff, like I really don't put out stuff that I don't want. And really the business decision would be to be like, here's what we'll sell. And I know what we'll sell from like The Way of Men. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff I could sell, but it's not the stuff that I want. So like I'll and it's not even bad stuff. It's not like it would be bad to sell those things. But there's money on the table there. And so a lot of business guys would look at that and be like, oh, well, you need to be doing this, 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 and this. And I'm like, well, I don't want to spend my day packing those orders, you know, or doing that. But, you know, there are options there. And so I think, you know, the point you brought up about the, you know, having money and having, you know, kind of a world centered around you. I've been thinking about that a lot myself, you know, because I do okay. You know, I'm solidly lower middle class. You know, but, you know, I hang out with all these millionaires and, you know, I know all these guys who are really successful.
Yeah.
And, then they make it, you realize you're like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm a poor person, you know? And so I look at what they're doing and what they have. And I think it is a real thing to aspire to have this gravity with what I always talk about with being solar or whatever. If you have money is kind of the thing that makes an ecosystem around you for whatever reason, you know, like when I talk about, you know, the sun pulls things into orbit around him and whatever. And I do that with ideas to a certain extent. I have people who like are attracted to my ideas and like, you know, kind of are in orbit around me to a certain extent. But, you know, like money is another thing. Because if you have like, okay, now these 5 employees that you're like all surviving off of you. And so you're carrying them and you're creating this whole ecosystem around you. And that's what, you know, that's kind of the king path. I mean, that's what really those guys do. I mean, they're not just feeding themselves, they're feeding all these other people. And that is a leadership role. And I think that's, you know, a lot of guys don't think about that, but that is you know, that is kind of where you want to get to. That's how you become very influential in your own world. I mean, even you know, I was thinking, I went out and did professional wrestling.
I saw that
with that. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to do a longer documentary about it. You know, like talk to that guy, because that guy actually had some really interesting things to say. Dom Vitale with the, you know, Arizona Pro Wrestling Training Center. We went out and did some fun stuff, and you know, I even talked to him and all his students. It's like his students are like, you know, I was screwing up in life. I was kind of like, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I found this, and he's teaching me how to make a living off of it. And I'm like, you know, like, so he, you know, you wouldn't even think about it. There's all these different areas. All these guys create these own little ecosystems around him. So he has this, you know, whole pro wrestling business world, and all these guys come in and they learn how to do it and they become professional wrestlers. And he's like, you know, when you go out to the show, like Dom's the guy, you know, he's the guy. There's a whole, like, you know, small arena, you know, like in a high school gym or whatever, and there's all these, you know, hundreds of people come in, and then, you know, like he's the guy who's running the whole thing. You know, and you wouldn't even think about that. I'm like, here's this whole ecosystem around this guy. And same thing, my martial arts gym that I go to. You know, you have like, you know, have a black belt, and the black belt like starts the gym, and then all of a sudden he creates this whole ecosystem around him, you know. And I think that's really what leadership is in many ways, is you create this thing that feeds all these other people. Yeah.
And you get rewarded, but you also take on a bunch of responsibility, and that not everybody's up for that. And you know, you brought up, well, one thing in particular, we've all been sold this lie that we all have to be Instagram influencers. And you actually brought that up in a story. You know, everybody wants to be a life coach. And that's made me assess what I'm doing. It's like, what am I trying to do with this podcast? Like, what am I trying to be? Because I'll go on, you know, I've been kind of distancing myself. I guess I like the manosphere in general. If you go on YouTube now, there's a lot of guys on there, you know. I'm very masculine, and I'm going to tell you how to live your life, and I'm a life coach, and I'm going to tell you how to win. And there's definitely some dudes in that space that do have a lot of great things to say and have a lot of things to share that you should listen to. But then it's just exhausting, because it seems like it's turning into this, like the masculine development space in general is kind of turning into this bastardized version of what it was kind of intended to be. Have you seen that a little bit? Because you've pointed out some of the bullshit.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, man, I'm like, I've had like, you know, Instagram paralysis recently. Like, I haven't posted anything forever except for the professional wrestling stuff. Just because I'm like, my job is to write about ideas and tell people, you know, here's what I think you should do. And now that's like every account is like, here's how you should live your life. And because I figured it out last week. And, you know, and so, I just feel like everybody's saying that. Like, I feel like maybe I need to become more cryptic and more interesting now, just because everybody's like giving people basic dad advice. And that's what most of this is basic dad advice, a lot of it. And then, I mean, Jordan Peterson, that's all he does is basic dad advice. Really, that's what he's known for. And there is something in this space it's changed. And it's like a lot of people realize that there's money there. And then, that creates its own kind of like system of predators and not even predators, but people who have a service to offer and they'll sell it to people. And they might be a good service, but there are a lot of guys who I know who do coaching who really do help guys in some way or other. But then there's a lot of people, I think, that just think that, they see other guys doing it and they think that's what they have to do too. And I've really resisted that personally. Like, I don't do coaching. I mean, I would if someone said, "Hey, I want to give you X amount of dollars to talk to me for an hour a month or whatever," I would do that. But I don't really market myself that way. And these guys market themselves aggressively. I forget. I'm always amazed by how much they actually charge. I've never felt comfortable like, "Hey, I'm going to tell you how to live your life based on what because that's a big break." And I was talking about this with a few of my friends, and it was based on a post that's a very popular influencer made that I'm not going to talk about and say his name because I like him. But it was basically like his post was like, "Here's the keys to living a good life," and it was like exactly his life. And I'm like, I feel like that's something that I have to offer that a lot of people don't. It's like, I don't tell you to live my life. You're like, my life is my life. It's going to be different. And I'm a weirdo. It's like, you can't be me. You couldn't be me if you tried, So like, I'm not going to tell you how to live my life. I'll tell you what I think is good and what I think are, some good ideas and what I think is best in life and so forth. But, I can't tell you how to live your life. And I think a lot of that's the big difference. And when you have someone who's very successful, like this person, to tell you how to live your life, if you're a certain kind of guy, he is saying most of the right things. But if you're, a lot of these guys, I mean, I think they've seen that there's money, or they've seen that there's opportunity, they're seeing you can make a living doing life coaching. And then they're like, well, I got my shit together last week, so here's how you can get your shit together too. And I'm going to coach you through it and make a bunch of money. And I think that's, I think it's more helpful to have more of a track record. I'd much rather learn that from the guy who's been in business for himself for like 15 years and knows what he's doing and that than this guy who literally just got his shit together yesterday. And I see that with a lot of people. Like, I quit porn, 3 months ago, and I can help you do it too. It's like, well, maybe you should see if that sticks, buddy. There's a lot of that out there. And I just
quit porn and then come out with an ebook like a week later, be like, 30 things I use.
You're like, I'm 1 week clean. You need to find. I think there's just something about having some track record with some things. And, there are a lot of coaches that are, have that track record. And then there are a lot of guys who I think are just trying to, here, I can sell you the way. And I think that's, it lacks a little bit of credibility, I think. And I just never wanted to be the guy who's like, here, live your life like I say, and now, you'll be a success.
I think there's an aspect of that is valid because you can only share what you know about yourself, right? And everyone's like that to a certain extent. Like, I know the posts that you're talking about. Certain people will say things that relate to them, be like, this is, read Jordan Peterson's book, it saved my life, like anything, whether it's like a diet or something you're into. You're going to want to be, you're going to want to share it with people. But at the same time, one thing that just from my own personal experience is, when I go on to this, like whatever you want to call it, the manosphere, this masculine development space, I'll see it, and I get so many of these different voices coming in, and then I'm like, well, what the fuck do I want? Like I'm in this. I made a YouTube video about like a digital detox I did, where I just like got off social media for a bit, and I was like, oh wow, I have space for my own inner voice. Like, I don't need some dude who I perceive as an authority figure to tell me how to live. I can just, it's social media in general, especially if you're in like a particular ecosystem on social media, you just take in so many different voices that you start to lose your own
Yeah.
inner dialogue. And that's a big problem. And that's something that I've kind of distanced myself from the space, because I see so many of this. Like every time I see the word like no fap, I'm just like, shut the fuck up. I don't want to see that. Like semen retention, like other shit. And everyone's just like parroting each other to the point where it's like it's becoming a meme. And it's also and another aspect of it is I feel like I've had to like kill off parts of myself in order to fit inside of it. And then I'm like, if I got to do that, then it's, and one thing in particular that I really like about your work, and, you're actually someone who's still very creative. You still have a big focus on art. And we talked about that in the last podcast. And I feel like the manosphere is not focused on art. It's very, I know everything's like, facts don't care about your feelings, shit like that. But in reality, it's not very artistic. And I'm a more, I grew up playing music, and, even you did a podcast with Kasky, and his music's fucking epic. But I guarantee you there's so many guys. And I had not this judgment in my head, but I thought about what other people would think. Be like, oh, you had Kasky on. He's a face tatted rapper. How dare you bring him on and talk? Like, you're supposed to be the guy who's teaching men about masculinity, but you're bringing this guy on. Or I can imagine a lot of guys thinking that in the space.
Yeah.
And not giving, not actually wanting to talk to people like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of social conservatives and stuff like that would be really like I could not listen to that guy. And I'm like, that guy inspired me. Like hang out with him. I'm like, holy shit, I'm standing still. Like he had so much energy. Like that I was I was blown away. I mean, yeah, I did the podcast before I met him, and then I met him and hung out with him, and it was just like, it was exciting. He was exciting to be around. And I think that I really needed to see that. And it just opens your mind up to how much the possibility is available. And yeah, I mean, he started out to, if you look at pictures of him for like 10 years ago, you're like, I don't want to hear a damn thing that guy has to say. Yeah. But now, I mean, like from where he is now, he connected with the right people at the right time and did the right thing. And now he's like, it's like lightning struck that guy. And, it was just really exciting to talk to him and meet him. And, I'm interested in stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of guys, so much of what they're saying is self-talk. In terms of, people use self-talk, and I do it too. We all do it. I mean, when you write, if you're writing, you're like telling other people the things that you need to hear yourself. And so a lot of they're doing like, gotta get up in the morning, gotta get up at 5 a.m., gotta do the thing. And I mean, Kasky does that too. And but your feelings don't matter. That's you yelling at your inner bitch and like putting it out there in the world. I mean, that's not 100% of life or anything else. That's just like, you need to discipline yourself. I mean, I can't tell you how many times and it's like a joke in my head. I'm like, Jack, don't be a faggot. No one likes faggots. All the time, whether it's like, I don't feel like lifting as heavy a weight as I should or whatever. It's Jack, don't be a faggot. Just do it. I say that to myself all the time. And that's my self-talk, but like, that's not like really like my life advice. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, otherwise, don't be a faggot.
You can do
it. Just fucking do it. Shut up, stop whining. I mean, everybody needs to hear that. You need to tell yourself that. But at the same time, I mean, there's more going on with that. And to speak to your point about creativity, I think that obviously men aren't focused on that, and that's been really to the detriment of like whether it's conservatives or people in the men's space or whatever. The idea that they're not focused on art, and I gave a big speech about that recently. And the problem is that they more and more people are realizing this, is that you don't have a living, thriving culture, and therefore you can't inspire people, because people actually make emotional decisions. They don't make intellectual ones. I mean, I've seen this with so many subcultures. I kind of laughed about the other day. I'm like, I have a life of living in subcultures. Like I see them all the time. And dudes, once they figure out the solution, it's like math. And then they have this whole, they used to be just like blocks of text on a website. Like, based on all these facts, here's how humans actually operate, and this is how you do it. And it's, here's the argument. And the argument is good. And they may be right, or about like half of it or whatever. But if you don't have some way to connect with people and inspire them and make them feel it, you are missing a piece. And that's what I think a lot of people have missed in getting their messages across, is they don't have that ability to communicate with the emotional side of people. Because men have emotion. People are like, women have emotions, men don't have emotions, but men have emotions. We just have different ones. Like the ones that get us are excited are not necessarily the same ones that get women excited, but like, you still have to connect with men.
That point right there is something that I have a problem with, is you'll see like there's huge overcorrection. And I'll agree, like the whole idea of like men need to be vulnerable. No, they don't. Right. Like I totally get that whole sentiment, but the idea that like I've seen so many people post things where it's like trying to get men to like shut off their emotions. But I think of like every movie where the masculine, like the hero, he does have an emotional side and he keeps it together. Like I think of like I don't know, I'll use this as an example, like Saving Private Ryan, like the captain in that, Tom Hanks. He like goes off, cries about something fucked up that happens when the medic gets shot. Doesn't show his men that he's crying, but he's clearly fucking shaken up, then gets his fucking shit together, comes back to the boys and is like, yo, this is what we're doing. What I'm saying? Like that's like I think the whole idea that men aren't emotional is actually like fucking gonna make guys go insane if they try to go like, I shouldn't be feeling this way because some guy on the internet told me I shouldn't be sad about this, or
I mean, it's the key is emotional control. It's not having emotion, it's emotional control. In the way that courage is control of fear, it's not like the absence of it. Emotional control is having emotions, but being able to control them and being able to put them in perspective and all that. And that's it is a good message to have men be able to control their emotions, but to understand that they still have them. And without them, they'd be just dead inside and like automatons that like just like you're a bot. At this point, like you're a fucking bot, like you don't have emotions. Like, what's the point of you? So you need to, I mean, why would you do a thing if you don't care about anything? Why would you do a thing? You're just like following orders. Like you're actually kind of dangerous at that point. Like, like you just do what you're told. Like you get like you're scary now. Like those are the bad guys. You have to do things because you care about them, and you care very deeply about them. I mean, like I care a lot about what I do, and there's when I feel like whatever my message is that I've developed over the years. I mean, I get teary about it. Like I'm like trying to do a thing. And, I think that that's really important to be motivated by something like that you really care about. And say, hey, if you don't, like, why are you here? What are you doing?
Is there, what would you say are ways that, say, someone who's in my position, who is interested in these ideas, how do I avoid just adding to the noise? Like how can I actually like be genuine with my message rather than being like all these other like kind of copycat? Like what would you say to people that are trying to like be engaged with these ideas, but don't want to be like I said, adding to the noise?
Well, you're going to make less money. No, I mean, I've been going back and forth with that myself a little bit recently, and have I tried too hard to like cater to certain people, like to fit in with a group, and or is the best path to really just be like your crazy, most authentic self and not give a fuck about what all like, and just go hard and go all the way. And that's probably the right answer in a lot of cases, but you're also going to meet a lot of resistance. I mean, the easiest path is going to be to say what everybody else is saying and just kind of repeat the right things and just put your own like moderately small spin on it.
Yeah, that's why. That's what I'm worried. That's what I'm worried about. I don't want to do
Yeah,
that.
and I think I've done pretty well over the years of having integrity. I mean, that's kind of something I'm proud of. I mean, to the detriment of my bank account. I'm very much, I'm not going to do something if I don't want to do it and I don't actually believe in it.
Yeah.
And so like, I have to, and a lot of times it takes a long time to think about what I actually believe, rather than like just coming off with like repeating, say the words, say the words, say the words, like what everyone else is saying, just repeat it.
Yeah.
If I actually have something different to say, like, well, how do I articulate that? And how do I articulate that in a way that I really believe it? So that I'm saying what I actually believe and not just saying things.
Mhm.
And you have to, that's difficult work. To have that integrity and not just say things that are going to get a response. And then you do have to marry that, because if you have something, a message that you care about, you do have to market it. And marketing means making some compromises and doing some things that everybody else is doing. So there's a balance there. Just you have to keep an eye on like where you're comfortable in with that balance. Like, like could I blow myself up on TikTok? Yes. Like, do I know how to do that? Yes. I would do some things that I don't feel are consistent with my message to do. There are other people who manage to do it, in a way that works for them, but I just don't think that that's my character, or like that's who I want to be. Like I'm not going to do funny voiceovers for videos and be cute, like that's not who I want to be. I mean, I'm a funny guy, but not in that particular way. I have an odd sense of humor, but like not exactly, like realist kind of basic silliness that people do on those kind of things. And like how much of yourself do you sacrifice for that and have your integrity? And there's always a middle ground of that. Like if you're going to sell some stuff, you're going to have to be like, hey, I'm going to have to go out and make sales, and I'm going to actually have to like do the things that people respond to and look at the marketplace and how that works. You just make sure that you're not just doing it for the sales. Like it becomes all about that. And I think a lot of people get lost in doing things just for the sales, but trying to get sales, if you're selling a good product, is not a bad thing. You just have, and at that's the point where you have to be like, well, maybe I have to make a TikTok video, but it's if you're selling it the right way and you're not compromising who you are.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. I'm curious, when you were writing The Way of Men and you were doing the delivery gig, when you were writing the book, were you thinking about finances a lot? Were you like, oh, I hope this book blows up because I need to get out of what I'm doing?
I never in my life thought that I would be able to live off being an author. That never occurred to me at that time. Not at all. I was just doing it because I thought it needed to be done, and I thought it was a good project for me. And obviously, I gotten a little bit of notoriety writing some other stuff, my things. I always cared more about legacy than money, and so it was more like, well, what am I giving to the world? What am I doing? And so when I was writing The Way of Men, I was just really like, this is a good project for me. I think I have something original to say. I think I'm saying it in a way that no one else is saying it. And so for me, it was a really important project, and it had nothing to do with, it's like, yeah, I hope I make some money, but I was not expecting to be able to quit my job. So, I mean, I made some good choices along the way. I did make some business choices that were smart. I got in on Audible really early, stuff like that. But
before Audible was even really that popular.
Yeah, well, a lot of people just didn't know that you could do it yourself, that you could read your own book and do that. Basically, audiobooks were still like, most people thought that only the big publishers had paid somebody to do it, and you get Ian McGregor or McEwen or whatever to read your book and that kind of stuff. But now I was one of the first people that I literally recorded. I mean, I wish I would do it better, but it's so much work to record an audiobook, because I could do it better now. But the audiobook that's still on Audible for The Way of Men, I was living in an apartment and recorded it on a laptop, half the equipment that I have now to do that kind of stuff and all that, and half the skill, because I didn't really know what I was doing.
That's the only way. That's the only way I really consume books. Like I listen to all your audiobooks. I haven't actually read the hard copies. That's in general, like Audible is usually the way I do it.
Yeah, and that's the way most people do it too. And you know, they get that credit every month and they impulse buy it, so it's easy to make sales. And you know, so it's yeah, I mean, fortunately my books, I feel like because I write in the first person, I have to be the person to narrate them.
Yeah.
And also
100%.
yeah, and also I think I write like I'm giving a speech anyway. So it makes sense as an audiobook. Whereas like if it's something that's very, you know, dense in terms of like facts and text and all that, then sometimes they make really difficult audiobooks, but I'm writing like I'm giving an impassioned speech. So like it makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, so you did like the delivery stuff part-time and just created as much room for the writing as
Oh no, I
possible.
was doing it full time. I mean, I had a full-time job. Yeah,
Holy
yeah, I had a full-time job. I was just like coming home and you know, trying to go to the gym and go in and then, you know, fitting it in on the weekends. You know, like I, you know, write for a couple hours at night or write, you know, like on the weekends mostly. And so, you know, it took me a long time. And now it still takes me exactly the same amount of time to write a book, except for I don't have a real job. So, so like, I don't know what that's about, but, you know, like it's just a different, you know, I'm in a different headspace and, you know, I think it gets harder as you go on writing stuff too, because then you have like that, you know, track record you have to keep up and you know, you have to look at it in a different way. And, you know, what have I already said? I get that all the time. People are like, well, in this book, blah, blah, blah. I really like, I'm like, I've written a lot of books. What did I say? Like in that one, what are you responding to in that one? Yeah, I said, because you know, that's a lot of words, you know, at this point.
That's actually fair.
Yeah. It takes me a minute. I have to. So everybody's been hitting me up about More Complete Beast like recently. Like I want to talk about that on my podcast, and I was like, I need to pull it out and see what I fucking said in that book, you know. And I look at it, and I'm like, okay, well, that's why that person likes that. And I was okay. I'm like, oh, well, I forgot I said that. That was kind of good. But yeah, I mean, just over time, you know, it all kind of blends together. But yeah, no, when I was writing The Way Man, I was still working a regular job, and then what I did after that was I started to make a little bit of money, you know, from The Way Men. So that like, you know, I had never not worked or worked for myself or whatever.
You made like $20 and then just quit immediately.
Yeah, no. I mean, it took it was like a couple years of like making pretty good money. And what I did was I was like, well, I don't know how long this is going to last. So I need to hurry up and get a trade so that I'm not just delivering stuff on trucks. So I spent the money I had made from The Way of Men and went to tattoo school. And wow. Yeah. And I was like, well, that way I can have my own tattoo shop someday and I can, you know, have a trade that I don't have to always, you know, like, you know, applying for jobs and, you know, taking urine tests and all that kind of stuff that people have to do. You know, I can go and have like kind of a cooler job. And so I went to tattoo school and then that's when I quit. Was really, I didn't quit because I was going to be a full-time author. I quit because I rented a space and I had my own like little tattoo shop. So I was going to kind of do both. And over time, it just became easier to make money by not tattooing because that was, you know, a lot of work, you know, but, you know, it's just you know, I wasn't really set up to be like a walk-in shop or whatever. So, but you know, that was how it transitioned out. So I didn't just go like quit my job and like, I'm going to be a full-time author. Now it was like, I need to make a living. Maybe I'll become a tattoo artist and for when all this falls apart and then I'll have something else. And so like now it's just, you know, whatever 7-8 years probably down the line, you know, like now I'm just unemployable. So I hope I have to keep doing this.
You're too notorious at this point.
Yeah, but you can Google me. Like, imagine I'd be lucky to get a job at McDonald's.
Yeah, still don't have your Wikipedia sorted out, eh?
Yeah, it is what it is.
That's super annoying. Yeah, well, like just that's interesting to me because that's stuff that I think about is, you know, you do need to make ends meet, and not everybody's gonna blow up and become, you know, make money off their work. You know, that's just it's unrealistic, like you said. Like not everybody can be Jack Donovan. The world would fall apart, and I don't mean that in like an offensive way. I just mean like some people gotta fucking,
Yeah.
do the plumbing, do the electrical,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think
Well, and
guys,
everybody wants to, like, I've said, like, everybody wants to quit their job, and I'm like, I've met guys who have like a real profession. Like, you have a profession, the kind of thing that I need to hire people to do. Like, are you sure you need to quit that to become like an influencer? I don't know if that's the right. I'm like, you're an accountant. I hire an accountant because I need someone to do that work. Like,
yeah,
don't all become influencers because I need an accountant. Like, I've seen
yeah,
lawyers do it too. Like, you're a fucking lawyer. Like, like, you went to law school. I need a lawyer. Like, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's probably a better thing to be a lawyer than it is to be an influencer. Like, unless you, like I said, unless that's your real passion and you have something really important to say. But if you just want to get
mhm.
online and talk about your feelings, like just be a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, that's another way you could look at it too. I've music has always been a big part of my life, and I have had some success in the past. Um, just with like Spotify streams and stuff like that.
Right.
But I took a long break from music because I was just like everything that I was focused on became about money. So I was like, if it doesn't make me money, I don't want to spend too much time on it. And then
Right.
recently, now that I've kind of caught up, I guess I don't even know what that means, but like caught up financially is in like I'm comfortable where I'm at and like, okay, I think I'm in a good spot. I'm making decent money. Um, I'm gonna work on some music. And then I would catch myself working on music and then being like, are people gonna like this? Is this gonna sell? And then I'm like, wait a minute, why do I fucking care? I'm just gonna
Right.
make music for myself. If anything, it's just like a spiritually fulfilling hobby. Like it makes me feel good. I get to relax and like, it could even be like a form of meditation just to sit there, make music, play piano, play guitar. Um, and I'll release it, I'll put it out, but it doesn't need to be, it's not like everything that I'm passionate about needs to be a source of income. Cause I think that can make
Right.
someone go insane. Cause like, yeah, I think, yeah, that's something where it's a balance to be struck. And that's like what I brought up at the beginning of this podcast was, there are going to be things you do. Like I went on a canoe trip with my brothers, and it wasn't like I made money doing that. It was an epic 3 days, but it's like that was super enjoyable. And it
But
was
you
like a
weren't you
very.
weren't shooting content every step of the way, because I mean,
That's what I'm
that's what I would
saying.
be
Like
doing.
I did, I did, I did have a GoPro on, but I
There
did
you
make
go.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like it's not like I put that out being like, oh shit, I'm gonna get sponsored by some fucking outdoor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like there's certain things you do that don't necessarily make money. And maybe as you do them, something down the line will come up. But
Sure.
yeah, I guess that's the
Yeah.
kind of the way when you're writing The Way of Man, that's how it was for you.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it was something I wanted to do. And now it's, the same thing. It's like I said, there are ways I could make money. Like I have people like with life coaching and stuff, like people have like been like, why are you not doing that? You're a fool. Like, yeah, and there's been a lot of things like that I could do. I mean, I could go around just giving speeches of the way of men. I mean, I've been told that by a multimillionaire, like, just go, you can do 15K in a weekend, like just go around and do that. And I'm like, well, that isn't what I want to do though. It's like, maybe, it's someone set it up for me, I would show up, but I'm like, I'm going to put all my energy in that. Like for me right now, I think stuff that was in Fire in the Dark, I think that I said some things that were really smart, in terms of like spirituality and like the archetypes and so forth. And I think that that's a viable direction. And I think there's a whole like, endless well of creativity to pull on that's there. And for me, that's, I think, where I want to focus my efforts. And I've, was doing some other stuff that I'm like, well, what do I really want to do? And that's, how do I bring these ideas to life more? Because I mean, I made some cool fucking symbols, and I made some like cool. There's some cool stuff there that's could be the thing for a lot of people. Not everybody. Nothing's the thing for everybody, but like it could be an important thing for a lot of people. And I'm like, well, how do I make that happen? And then it's going to be the part of that to make it happen is a lot of just exploration and doing work that there's some kind of end somewhere, but it's not like making me money right away. You know, like it's not like it's an immediate like investment and a return. It's like, well, if I build this, then there's products that come off of it, and then there's other things that happen as it progresses. But first, I have to make it exciting, and I have to make it invest in it, and so that's what we've been doing with that account, PH2T3R put there. I've been doing that Instagram account, and that's where if you notice, I've been putting all my effort into that recently. Like I'm trying to post there every day, and we've been making AI art. You know, I have a couple guys working with me who are also doing cool stuff. One of them just released his first NFT collection the other day based off the AI art that we're doing. And then I dropped one this morning. Like I was doing that. I had to figure out how to do an NFT like yesterday. And it wasn't really to make money right now. I mean, I don't think I'm going to have one of the like $500,000 NFTs, you know, like, yeah, but you know, he bought it right away. He bought mine. I bought his. And it was like, I'm like, you know, down the line, my first NFT might be actually worth something like, you know, down the road, you know, and maybe his too, you know, like, so it's just something that, you know, we're trying out. But my idea was basically like, how do we make art that represents these ideas that I talked about, you know, kind of this solar idealism that I've talked about in Fire in the Dark. And so, yeah, it's been a lot of like, just goofing around trying to be like, well, how do I envision this, and how do I say that, and how do I make this exciting, and how do I put it out there? And yeah, but it's not profit driven.
Yeah, well, it's refreshing to hear, because you know you're putting you're not putting a focus on the finances, and by doing that you're leaving room for the creativity. Because if you were solely focused on finance, you wouldn't have the room to play.
I wouldn't even do this. Like, like this is a stupid idea. Like, if you want to make money, this is not how you do it. But you know, I look at people who have done that down the road. Something, I think it's the Church of the Sacred Mirror. I looked, you know, looking at examples. It's called the Church of the Sacred Mirror or something, and see people who, you know, maybe 30 years ago started making psychedelic art. And they just made really good psychedelic art, and they made it, and they have a whole like collection of symbols and whatever. I mean, I'm not into their thing. I don't really understand it, but I mean, you know, the dude who runs it, like, I think his name is Alex Gray, and he has, you know, millions of followers now. And I mean, they have their own art gallery up in, you know, like Massachusetts or something, and you know, people come to it for like special events, and they have this whole thing that they've built off this beautiful idea that they and that's kind of like my model is like, I want to, you know, but you have to put the work in to get there. Like, let's make something interesting enough to attract people, and then you know, somewhere down the line profit. But like, it's more like the important thing is to make the thing that, you know, it really connects with people. And so that's kind of what I focus on now, at the point where like it's kind of hard, because I'm like, I should be trying to make money, Jack trying to make money, you know, but I've been taking some online art courses because, you know, I went to art school, but it's been a minute, and I'm like, I need to get my hand back so that I could draw better, so that I could do this stuff. Because then I don't want to just make, you know, mid-journey AI art. You know, you can make some cool stuff on there, but that's not what I want to do. You know, like, I want to be able to actually articulate exactly what I want to show. And so I've been working on trying to be able to draw, you know, clean up my figure drawing a little bit, so that I can get to the point where I can draw the ideas that I have and really read them and put them out. And then maybe, you know, maybe I get to be a painter, you know, like, like maybe I get to be a painter, because I'm kind of tired of talking, like, as far as like telling dudes how to be men. I feel like I got that. I nailed that. I feel like that I said what I had to say about it, you know, like, and I don't want to just talk about that every day for the rest of my life, you know? And so like, I don't know, the idea of like actually being able to put out paintings and do art and stuff is really exciting. But again, you have to put in the work to get there. You don't get to be like, oh, I bought an iPad with Procreate, and 6 days later I'm doing masterpieces. You know, there's a lot of work that goes in the middle. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting you say you don't want to keep talking about that. I feel like it's easy to pigeonhole yourself. You know, if you write a bunch of books on one specific topic or one theme, maybe if you go over here, people are going to be like, oh, that's not on brand. What are you doing? So that's something to think about too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there is the whole version of me that I wish could clone off to just be Jack Donovan, Way of Men. Like he just does that job. Like he's just does that job. I'm going to do primal masculinity and train with guns and and this is what it's all martial arts, all guns, all like primal masculinity, evolutionary psychology. That is a whole brand that it could exist by itself. But obviously, I have to do what's exciting to me, and that was 10 years ago when I wrote that book. So like, I need to be doing what I'm excited about now, and without losing that, I still want to be that guy. And sometimes I have to step in and be that guy because people are running their mouth talking bullshit. Like the stuff that was right about the Way of Men, and you see dudes like kind of skewing things off in their own weird direction that doesn't make any sense, and like whatever. And then I feel like, oh no, this is why I wrote that, and this is why, and that's why you're wrong. Like I can come in and correct the situation because I feel like I'm still very passionate about those ideas. It's just not like new and exciting to talk about all the time. But then I think actually this year at the 21 convention, I was gonna try and give a speech about masculine aesthetics, because that's kind of interesting to me. That's one of the reasons I wrote the Way of Men originally was, it's like, how can you look at a thing and determine if it's masculine or not? And if you understand what masculinity is, you can kind of, objectively almost value something according to masculinity. And so I wanted to talk about that. Then I realized with a lot of stuff that's going on in the manosphere, and we've talked about this a little bit before, kind of the religious skew that's happening with certain people, and like there's just a lot of confusion. And I wrote a series of essays back and forth between me and Cameron Dixon, and there's a lot of people like, I'm like, the whole different idea of being a good man or being good at being a man that I talk about. I'm like, there's a reason why I said that, and I'm still right. And I'm like, there's a reason why that, and so now I think when I give my speech, I think I'm just gonna like talk about the Way of Men 10 years later and really drill down on some of these reasons that, like, well, here's why I wrote this, and if you go down the path of where you're going, this is what happens. And this is why it's logically more consistent to stay on this path. And so I really want to kind of break that down and define it, I think, for 21 this year.
So you're doing that again this year, or you just did it?
No, I'll do it in October. So I think it's months now, and it's in October in Orlando.
Yeah, that is an interesting point. You've actually been kind of critical of those that kind of like they almost just become Christian because that's what you're supposed to do, according to some of these guys,
Right.
And I've definitely like heard people have definitely criticized you for that within the manosphere. And I'm curious, do you get a lot of that? Like, do people like DM you, and like, do you get a lot of I guess like confrontation from people who disagree with you?
Well, a little bit. I mean, the thing is, it's kind of like me and Anthony Johnson both, like, we've actually always been at the same, like we're the same guys that we were like 10 years ago. You guys decided you turn Christian like recently. So like, I'm still saying the same shit. Like I haven't changed a lot in that. I mean, I've changed kind of my interpretation of things as time has gone on, but I've never been Christian, like probably not since I was 5. So like, that's not really never been on the table. And as someone said, I'm the final boss of evangelism. Like you're in a hard no, buddy. That is never going to happen. And people have all the reasons why they think that is, and it's really just because I have some deep philosophical problems with it. Like from the stuff that I wrote about in the Way of Men, I think there's some conflicts there. But yeah, I mean, I'm getting a little bit more because it's become an issue recently, and I really think it has to do with the pandemic and all this stuff. It's like there are a lot of people like got a little panicked, and they're searching for something. They're a little desperate in a way, and they're like, what's the thing? And in many ways, it's my fault for not providing something better. If I take a Jocko look at it, I'm like, well, like I have this whole thing that I came up with over here, but I was busy selling Chess Magazine last year. That didn't even work out. And so like, I should, it's like because, the Viking thing kind of died out, like there was kind of like, there were a lot of people doing Norse paganism, and it kind of like, just kind of, it just lost some energy. I'm like, well, I should have shown up and taken that energy and channeled it. But, I was busy doing other shit and trying to be like a nice guy and fit in with all these other people. And so now I'm like, well, so, I need to work on creating that alternative, because you're always going to need an alternative to Christianity and so forth. I mean, there's just guys who that's just not going to work for, which is not appealing to them. So, I mean, I think that's something that you need to, like that. I have gotten some pushback on that recently, obviously from a lot of people, but that's fine. I guess I have to. I never was like in a place where I had anger about Christianity that I had to like, this is why you're wrong. I've been to that place, but I was like, in my 20s, like, and as an adult, like I haven't had to deal with Christianity for like a decade or two, like I'm like, who cares? I don't believe what you want. I don't need to convert people, but they do. And that's the problem. So like, I don't mind them being who they are. It's like if you were raised with Christianity, it's just who you are. It's part of what you are. And there's no reason for me to talk you out of it. I don't win. I'm not going to heaven for talking you out of it. I don't have like anything to win. But at the same time, like if you're going around like actively converting people and kind of, I think, selling them a different thing than you're actually selling, like if you're trying to like convince people that it's this and it's really not that. And, like you're giving, I don't know. I feel like there's a manipulative aspect of it going around. Just join our team, we have punch and pie. And, like we can, we have all these benefits, and there are a lot of social benefits. If you just say the words, whether you believe it or not, if you just say the words, you can be, and that's the way a lot of the world works. A lot of people work, like same thing with the pandemic and everything. Just trust the science, say the words. Like, if you say the words, you get to be one of us. If you don't say the words, you don't get to be one of us. And I think that that's a lot of what's happening with that situation right now. And I think that a lot of those guys will burn out, because I don't think that most of those guys want to be celibate. And I don't think that, they want to, I don't think they want all the things that they're being sold on. For the percentage of them that are going to get their white picket fence, like kind of boring life that they want, they're told that they want. A lot of them are gonna be like, just get bored with it, honestly, like, because it's kind of boring. So a lot of them are gonna get bored with it and go back to whatever they were doing. And I feel like there is a middle way, and that's I think the response, like in the men's community or whatever, has been like, for a lot of people, I think it's a response to anger about like, whatever, the purple hair, lesbian, genderless, whatever, and like, see, if we went back to the Bible, none of this would have happened. And and that's really what they're selling. Like there's two options. There's like genderless worm people trying to sexualize your children.
False dichotomy.
Or there's Jesus. And I don't feel like that's the choices that we have. I think that there, like if you look at the ancient world, I mean, there's a lot of wiggle room in between that, where like there's a lot of cultures that have existed in the world where there's a lot of, there's a wide berth in between, like, we all like, wear white and go to church and say prayers after every meal and have this very, very locked down kind of life, and just pure, like, messy, drug addicted hedonism. There is a middle way. And I think that we can find that, but it does require some thought, and it's so I just don't think that you have to go one way or the other. But dude, as you mentioned earlier, I think men do tend to overcorrect dramatically, and I think that that's what we're seeing now is like, well, you said this, so I'm going to go the whole way other way. But I just think a lot of really sensible guys out there who are like, yeah, I don't need either of those things. So I think I just want to make sure that those guys don't get lost, because that other voice got really loud here just recently, and like,
Yeah.
like everybody has to join our team, blah, 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 bench press for Jesus, and then but there, I think, a lot more people, and it was hard to see from Utah because I was in fucking Utah, but then even coming down here to where I'm in Arizona, I'm like, I'm going to the gym. It's like there are people who go to church here, but I'm sure that most of these people do not. There's all kinds of jacked, beautiful people like with tattoos and whatever. And I'm like, these are not people who are trying to like live that life, like so, I mean, I think that there's actually really a majority of people who are like not going to go all the way on that. So I think that we have to find a better path for them so that they don't also, they don't just get sucked into that kind of California mentality as well. There's just more, there's more there.
Yeah, that's all. I agree with everything you just said there. I know in my personal life, it's tough because I think last time you told me you were raised Catholic, I was raised Catholic as well.
Yeah.
And I went through the whole rebellious atheist phase. And since then, also, like being in the manosphere and whatnot, you do see a lot of Christianity, and, Jordan Peterson has the biblical lectures, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this stuff really does help you, and certain aspects of it help you. But I've never really been able to, like, at one point for like 2 months, I was wearing a crucifix and I was like, I think I do want to be Christian.
Right.
And then I kind of just got to a point where it's like, but I don't really believe it though. Like, I don't believe it. I'm not completely on board. So why am I doing this? So I took the crucifix off because I felt like a poser. And it was like, I can't really fully come back, because I was never really, like, even when I was young, I was just raised in a Catholic house. I never really was Catholic. Like, I never really felt like a Christian. And once I kind of went through the atheist phase and came back, it's like, no, I see why religion is helpful. And I see why. I'm definitely not an atheist by any means, but yeah, it's kind of hard to find your place if you're kind of in that no-go, in that gray area where you're not really a believer of Christ. You see a lot of, have you ever read Joseph Campbell's work?
Yeah.
Like the
I mean, I not like back to back, but like a lot of essays and parts.
Yeah,
of
it's like, and I used to do a lot of, I had a phase where I did a lot of psychedelics, and I would read that kind of stuff, and I'm at peace. Like, I don't feel like I need to find something, because I'm not going to know what happens to me when I die. It's like, whether you want to say like psychedelics are like, I don't do psychedelics anymore. I'm not even an advocate of psychedelics necessarily, but I did have some experiences that made me go, oh wow, like I kind of feel like I know what's going to happen when I die. So I don't really have some dread inside of me that needs to like pick a religion and be a strict follower of that faith. I just kind of, I don't know. It's weird too, because like even in a micro sense in my personal life, I also did an overcorrection where I went way over here, like no more degeneracy. I'm going to be this perfect, like I guess you pointed it out last time, like a Ned Flanders type of character who just says no to everything. But then it's like, no, man, that's not me at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. Like, you don't want those people that kind of find themselves in the middle to get lost.
Right. Because I mean, I think that's where a lot of people are. And I think that that's a good place to be, because I mean, and that's why I feel like what I was saying with Fire in the Dark really made a lot of sense, because we can see all of history. And a lot of times what you're doing, asking people to do, is to stop seeing history. And that's problematic. Like that's, to me, I'm like, I can't go back and say that that's not derivative. Like that became something that was, I mean, I have a buddy who's my buddy, Clinton McMillan. He's such a power nerd. And he drills down with language and chases all these ideas all around. And he's convinced that Yahweh is actually Proto-Indo-European, and he found like the root that connects them. So like, like the original name of, like the Jewish God came from Proto-Indo-European stuff. And he's like, anyway, like I mean, there's so much of that, like, and you have to literally pretend that you didn't see it. For a lot of these, to satisfy a lot of these people, you have to pretend that like, no, like the world started at this point and everyone else was wrong in history. And just this is the place where everything became right. And everyone sucked before that. And, they were just confused. And I just can't believe that. You know, like I can't believe that. You know, and I did the same thing with like Germanic paganism. Like I'm like, well, this one truth that happened in this period of 1,000 years. That's it. That's it. You know, like, well, that's just what those people believed at that time. And I think that's why I like, you know, what I said in that book is that, you know, I think that we can sit from where we are right now and see all these things in history and see how these things evolved and take the Joseph Campbell route. The Joseph Campbell route, unfortunately, is kind of influenced by, I think, Eastern religion and certainly, and tends toward everything is the same, so nothing matters. You know,
Yeah,
a little bit
dude,
towards that.
I actually just had that thought in my head. Was like
Yeah.
a little bit of this like Eastern philosophy. It has its value, but it also is like very, I don't know if this is, I guess, like anti-masculine. Like it's just like, just accept everything, bro. Like everything is just what it is, bro. It's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, create.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the void. I mean, that's the voice of the void. That's like,
it's like spiritual. Someone once said to me, Eastern philosophy is kind of like spiritual nihilism.
Yeah, and obviously that would be too big of a thing to put on Eastern philosophy, and there's all kinds of sects and all the things that believe different things, and it's someone will be like, no, it's not like that at all, bro. You know, like there's all kinds of stuff out there. I mean, there's, you know, like the stuff that Clint gets into, like Vajrayana Buddhism and all kinds of stuff that came from the Proto-European stuff. And then, you know, there's Buddhists that sacrifice people, like, you know, like there's all kinds of stuff that goes around. But, you know, there's just a lot more richness there. But at the same time, yeah, if you can see everything, you know, if everything is the same, then nothing matters is the place where a lot of people go with it. And that's, you know, like that's kind of empire of nothing stuff, you know, like everything's the same, nothing's matter, everything. Why should you live in someone else? It's like the formula for genocide eventually, you know, like everyone is the same, we're all interchangeable, our blood is all the same blood, and therefore like, why should it matter if half of you go to the gas chamber? Like, you know, like there's a setup there that's not good, and like a lot of people can't see it, like I do. And it's not good. But I think, you know, the opposite of that, you know, like you take all these things in history and then look at them and say, like, what are these ideas that endure? Like, what are the ideas that are repeated over again? And I'm like, well, maybe that's as closest to truth as we're ever going to get. You know, these ideas that are like the same over and over again. You know, like what do we keep doing? And like, rather than like this one religion had it right or this other religion had it right, let's look at these themes and you know, and see, instead of being nihilistic about it, being like everything's the same, nothing matters, let's drop acid and say fuck off. You know, like you know, instead of that, let's look at it and be like, well, you know, like fighting the dragon of chaos is kind of a universal theme that keeps coming back over and over again. Well, why? And what does that mean? And you know, like and that importance of that never goes away in all these religions, you know, and you have examples in Christianity and all that, like it just keeps repeating. So like let's look at those things and like, find meaning in that rather than like this pure nihilistic perspective, or that, or the opposite being put your head in the sand and be like, this is the truth, I don't want to hear everything else, this is it, like we have to decide what the truth is.
Both those are dangerous because you have one, the nihilism of just like the empire of nothing, and then the guy who's just like, yep, nope, this particular sect of Christianity is the truth. Like one thing for me is I was homeschooled for a little bit when I was younger, and my mom put me and my brothers in this like homeschool group, and it was like my parents are Christian. A lot of Christian people tend to homeschool their kids for a little bit.
Sure.
And I remember I was with these group of kids, and they all kind of believed in, it wasn't all Catholics. If anything, Catholics were kind of demonized in this group because there are all these different sects of Christianity. And they would all argue amongst each other, be like, oh, you guys think, like, I remember like one kid was like, oh, you guys like worship Mary because, you know, Catholic, they say hell.
Catholic is basically paganism. Like compared to like, compared to most Protestants, Catholicism is basically paganism.
And I remember being young and just thinking to myself, like I was like 12 or 11 or something like that, just being like, there's something not right about this. And that kind of like that planted the seed in me of like, well, shouldn't we be all focused on the commonalities rather than being like drawing these like hard lines and saying like, oh, you're blah blah, you're this, so you're wrong. Your interpretation of life is
Yeah.
wrong, so we're gonna make you the other. It's like, and I, a lot of the arguments that the atheists use they have a point. There's a point to be made. I don't agree with them, like I don't agree with them fundamentally speaking, but they do have a lot of good points to raise when it comes to religion. And for someone who hasn't really I can't really draw a line, because if I'm too open, I'm open to other things. And I'm definitely not nihilistic though. I feel I'm grateful. Like I'm not in a spot where I need to find something. I feel good with where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I think here's a really interesting paradox of it that I struggle with all the time, is that men are tribal and humans are tribal generally. So that thing that you're saying that they do is actually natural for them to do. Yes. And they're never going to stop doing it. And like, that's like a paradox of like human nature, is that like, it is 100% within the scope of human nature for these people to get into their own little tribes and make up their own little version of reality, and then defend that version of reality because it's within their perimeter. And that's their hill to die on. Mm-hmm. And it also, and this is kind of what I want to talk about when I give my speech a little bit, is that is also a prelude to genocide to a certain extent, because there's this thing there, like, and this is one of the reasons why I try and separate masculinity and morality, is that when you're preparing yourself to murder the other tribe, because that's what people had to do. I mean, that's within our nature to do that, is to murder the other tribe. And to murder them, you have to dehumanize them, which is pretty well established. And you dehumanize them by saying that like they're like evil. And if they're evil, it's because they don't worship the right God. And like their version of truth is a lie. And by existing, they're spreading lies and doing the work of the devil. And therefore it's okay to murder them. Like that's the train that goes down. Like, and most of the people are just nice people. They're like, no, this is the right way. But like, that's what that's the function of that.
Mm-hmm. Is, I mean, there's a great example of that. There's a great example of that over the last few years. Tribalism. Oh, you didn't get the thing? Uh-oh, dehumanized, evil person.
Yeah. It's the same instinct. It's just been like, repurposed in a different way. I mean, ideologies do it all the time. But yeah, I mean, like, yeah, so all this sectarianism that happens within like Christianity and so forth. I mean, like America has freedom of religion because Christians couldn't stop killing each other, like because that's what they were doing in Europe for like, hundreds of years. And because over the different points of like whatever, well, and because those points give you a reason, because now you're fighting for God. And like, that's what a lot of what these guys want to do, I think, who are also converting, like doing the conversions of convenience that we were talking about, is that they don't want to come out and say, I hate you, blue-haired, genderless person, because I think you're wrong and I think you suck personally. They want to say God thinks you're wrong and God thinks you suck, and then they have a big man standing behind them. Like they're the big man and he's right, and he's standing behind you and giving you the authority to say you suck, rather than they're just two people living on Earth saying like you suck. Like I think you're wrong, and here's why I don't like you. And that takes a lot more courage, I think, in some ways, to just be like, I don't like you because I don't like you, and I don't like what you're doing because I don't like what you're doing, rather than like God says you're wrong, and I must exterminate you from this earth.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy. It's heavy to think about, but
yeah. I struggle with that all the time, because like, how can I tell these people not to do the thing that they do? Because that's what men are. Like how do I tell men to not be what they are? But being an outsider that can see that, like I can be critical of it as well, and I can try and warn against it. But obviously, I know that is the nature of the thing. So it's very tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jack. Well, we're over the hour mark now, so we should probably wrap this up. What do you want to point people to? Like, what's your latest thing you're doing? Is that Chess Magazine?
No, chess, we're actually kind of wrapping up. We didn't have, neither of us really had enough time to do it. And so like, that's going to be online, be available for people what's up there now. My real focus right now is that artistic project, the PH2 T3R. And that's also my Twitter handle. And it's a separate Instagram page. And that's where we've been doing all the creative work that I'm trying to get started right now. So that's what I really care about. And that's been growing every day. Like my Instagram has been like stuck at the same like thing for forever. But like, but there, like people are like seeing it all the time. Like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is some neat stuff that they're doing. It's a little different. And so that's really what my focus is. So it's PH2 T3R.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'll definitely send people to that. I'll link it in the show notes. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me, man.
No problem, man. Always a pleasure.